Some coffees look premium the moment you see them, and that alone makes you expect more. Better flavor, more depth, a stronger experience. But here's the problem. Some of them don't actually deliver in the cup. And today, I'm going to show you 5 of them. Let's start with one almost everyone knows. Starbucks Pike Place Roast. This coffee carries a strong image. You see the brand, the packaging, the name, and right away you expect something above average. Something rich. Something memorable. And to be fair, when you open the bag, the aroma actually supports that expectation. It smells balanced, inviting, like it's going to deliver a solid cup. But once it's brewed, that's where things shift. The flavor is smooth, easy to drink, but not as deep as people expect. It doesn't have that strong character the branding suggests. It feels more like a safe, everyday coffee. And that's where the gap shows up, because the expectation was higher than the experience. Now the next one creates a different kind of expectation. Il Classico. This one doesn't scream premium, it suggests it quietly. The packaging is clean, minimal, very controlled, and that alone makes people think it's something refined, something carefully crafted, something a bit more elevated. And when you open it, the aroma matches that impression. It's smooth, balanced, not aggressive. Everything feels precise. But once it's brewed, the flavor follows that same direction. And that's where it becomes interesting, because it's good, very drinkable, but also a bit too safe. It doesn't stand out. It doesn't create that moment where you think, this is different. And that's the issue, because it looks like it should. Now the next one is where expectations get even stronger. La Bassa Qualit. Rosa and this. Coffee's presence. Bold colors. Italian branding. A long history behind the name. And for a lot of people, that automatically signals quality. Something traditional. Something reliable. Something a step above the usual options. And when you open it, the smell reinforces that idea. There's a bit of richness there. A touch of depth. Something that suggests a stronger cup. But once it's brewed, it doesn't fully go in that direction. It's smoother than expected, more balanced, but also less expressive, less bold than the image suggests. And again, that doesn't make it bad. It whose doesn't match the expectation it creates. And by now, you're probably starting to notice the pattern. These coffees are not failing. In fact, most of them are perfectly fine for everyday use. Some people actually prefer this kind of smooth, balanced profile. But the issue here is not quality. It's expectation. Because when something looks premium, you expect more from it. And when it delivers something that feels more average, even if it's good, it still feels like something is missing. And that's really what this comes down to. The gap between what you expect and what you experience. Because the bigger that gap is, the more noticeable it becomes. And with coffees like these, that gap is just enough to make people feel like something didn't quite live up to what they had in mind. Now the next one on this list is a bit different, because it doesn't just look premium, it positions itself that way very clearly. Nescafe Gold. Even the name sets the expectation. Gold immediately suggests something better, something more refined, something above the standard version. And when you look at the jar, the design reinforces that idea. It feels more polished, more intentional. And when you open it, the aroma actually feels smoother than what most people expect from instant coffee. It's clean, slightly richer, and right away it makes you think this might be closer to a real brewed experience. But once you mix it, that's where things shift again. The flavor is still good, but it doesn't quite reach the level the presentation suggests. It still has that instant coffee profile, lighter body, less depth, and a finish that feels a bit simpler than expected. And that's where the disconnect shows up, because the way it looks and presents itself raises the expectation, but the experience stays closer to what instant coffee usually is. Now the next one is interesting for another reason, because here, the expectation doesn't come only from the packaging. It comes from experienced Dunkin' Original Blend. Most people already know this coffee from the stores. They've had it fresh. They associate it with something consistent, something enjoyable, something that just works. So when they see it in a bag, they expect that same experience at home. And visually, it supports that. The branding is familiar, clean, and reassuring. And when you open it, the smell is pleasant, light, smooth, approachable. Nothing feels wrong. Everything points in a good direction. But once it's brewed, that's where it becomes more neutral than expected. It's still good, still easy to drink, but it doesn't feel as special as people imagine. It's more of a dependable everyday coffee than something memorable. And again, that's not a problem unless your expectation was higher than what it delivers. And the last one on this list brings everything together, because it's probably one of the strongest examples of how expectation can shape the experience. Folgers Black Silk. This coffee is positioned as bold, dark, intense. Even the name suggests something deeper, something stronger, something more impactful. And when you open it, the aroma follows that direction. It smells darker, heavier, more roasted. And that immediately creates a very specific expectation. You expect a strong cub, something with presence. But once it's brewed, it doesn't fully match that intensity. Yes, it's darker. Yes, it's a bit stronger than a regular roast, but not in the way people imagine. It's still relatively smooth, still controlled, and not as bold as the name suggests. And that's where the difference becomes clear, because the expectation was built around intensity, but the experience ends up being more balanced than that. And at this point, the pattern is clear. It's not about these coffees being bad. Most of them are perfectly fine, and some are even very enjoyable depending on what you're looking for. But they all create a certain image, a certain expectation, that down tea fully deliver when you actually drink them. And that gap, that difference between what you expect and what you experience, is what shapes how you feel about the coffee in the end. And once you start noticing that pattern, it becomes hard to ignore it, because you realize it's not really about the coffee itself. It's about the expectation you create before you even taste it. The moment you see a package that looks premium, something in your mind already sets a higher standard. You expect more flavor, more depth, more character, something that stands out from everything else. And when that doesn't happen, even if the coffee is perfectly fine, it feels like something is missing. That's why two people can drink the exact same coffee and have completely different reactions. One person might think it's smooth, balanced, and easy to drink. The other might think it's flat, unremarkable, and not worth it. And the difference between those two reactions is not always in the coffee. A lot of the time, it's in what they were expecting before they even took the first sip. And that's where a lot of these premium-looking coffees get misunderstood, because they're not necessarily trying to be complex or bold or memorable. Many of them are designed to be consistent, controlled, and easy to drink every day. And for a lot of people, that's exactly what they want. Especially if you drink coffee regularly, you don't always want something intense. You don't always want something that demands attention. Sometimes you just want something that works, something you can rely on without thinking too much about it. The problem is when the image suggests something else, when the packaging, the branding, the name, everything about it makes you think it's going to be something special, something above average. And when the experience doesn't match that, it creates that small sense of disappointment. Not because the coffee failed, but because it didn't match the idea you had in your mind. And once you understand that, you start making better decisions. You stop assuming that more expensive or better-looking coffee is automatically better. You stop relying only on what you see on the shelf. And you start paying more attention to what you actually enjoy when you drink it. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Not the branding, not the image, not the expectation, but the experience in the cup. And that doesn't mean you should avoid these coffees. It just means you see them more clearly. You understand what they are. And more importantly, what they are not. And that alone changes the experience. Because when your expectation matches reality, the coffee feels more consistent, more honest, and in many cases, more enjoyable. And that's really what this comes down to. Not saying these coffees are bad, but showing that the way they present themselves doesn't always match what you get when you actually drink them. And once you start paying attention to that, you notice it more often. Not just with coffee, but with a lot of everyday products. So the next time you pick up a coffee that looks premium, take a second before you decide what you think about it. Because sometimes the ones that look the best are not the ones that stand out the most when you actually drink them. And sometimes the ones that seem more simple end up being exactly what you were looking for. And now I'm curious about you. Have you ever tried a coffee that looked premium but didn't impress you as much as you expected? Let me know in the comments, because that's where you start to see how different people experience the same coffee in completely different ways. And if you enjoy this kind of content, simple and honest breakdowns of everyday coffee, make sure you're subscribe, because there's a lot more like this coming. And in the next video, we're going to look at something slightly